Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're all doing well this very fine day. I am Architect Omnique, and we welcome you all today for this occasion. We are assembled here for a very special purpose, that is, to participate in the deliberations of today's session. Under the patronage of Embassy of Switzerland in India, ACT Chandigarh, Sakar Foundation, and Ultratech Cement, three-part webinar has been jointly organized as a series titled Process of Chandigarh: Carrying Forward the Legacy of Le Corbusier, Pierre Jeanneret on 25 March, April 9, April 22, 2021 between 2:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. It is supported by Le Corbusier Foundation, Paris, IIA Chandigarh and Punjab chapters, FSAI and GEN. I would like to add that Swiss Chandigarh is the creation of Swiss-born French architects. Embassy of Switzerland to India from a very long time has taken a keen interest in Chandigarh, and we are ecstatic to share that nearly 12 architecture schools and research organizations are participating in this event. We welcome their management, faculty, and students to this one-of-a-kind event. Chandigarh, the dream city of India's Prime Minister Sri Jawaharlal Nehru, was one of the early planned cities in post-independence India and is internationally known for its architecture and urban design. The master plan of the city was prepared by Swiss-French architect Le Corbusier, which transformed from early plans created by the Polish architect Messier Nowicki and the American planner Albert Mayer. Most of the government buildings and housing in the city were designed by the Chandigarh Capital Project team, headed by Le Corbusier, Jane Drew, and Maxwell Fry. Indeed, the making of Chandigarh from scratch was a rare phenomenon. It needed far-sightedness, daring, and conviction. Even in 2015, an article published by BBC named Chandigarh as one of the few master plan cities in the world to have succeeded in terms of combining monumental architecture, cultural growth, and modernization. Picturesquely located at the foothills of Shivalik, it is known as one of the best experiments in urban planning and modern architecture in the 20th century in India. I would like to add that Swiss Chandigarh is also the creation of Swiss-born architects. We extend our warm welcome to the members and architects who are here with us for today's session on legacy and vision. The expert speakers invited are having great experience on the subject. And to start with the session, I would like to invite architect Mansi Ghavi to give the welcome address. Over to you, architect Mansi.
Thank you so much, Ramneet. Good afternoon to all. I would like to welcome you all to today's event, carrying forward the legacy of Le Corbusier and Pierre Jeanneret, which is being organized by ACT Chandigarh and Sakar Foundation Chandigarh. First of all, we would like to welcome His Excellency Dr. Ralph Peckham, Ambassador of Switzerland to India and Bhutan, as our chief guest for the day. We are grateful to him for sparing his valuable time for all of us. Warm welcome goes to today's keynote speaker, Dr. Philip, Professor of History of Art and Architecture in Department of Architecture at Swiss Federal Institute of Technology located in Zurich, Switzerland. We also welcome our speakers for the day, Architect Shilpa Das, practicing architect from Chandigarh, Mr. Manmohan Lal Sareen, Senior Advocate Chandigarh, Architect Sumit Kaur, former Chief Architect, and Architect Surinder Baga, practicing architect and author based at Chandigarh, Dr. Aradhna Jundal, Principal and Dean, School of Architecture, Ambala. We specially welcome architect Ramneet Gharyal for comparing the webinar. It brings me immense pleasure to share that nearly 12 architecture schools and research organizations are participating in this event today. We extend a warm welcome to their management personals, faculties, and students to this one-of-its-kind event. In addition, we would like to welcome our supporting organizations, Embassy of Switzerland to India and Bhutan, Consulate Journal of Switzerland in Mumbai, and Consulate Journal of Switzerland in Bangalore, Le Corbusier Foundation Paris, Ultratech Cements, Indian Institute of Architects, Chandigarh and Punjab chapter, FSAI and GEM Chandigarh chapters. Welcome you all I welcome you all to this event. Thank you very much. Over to Ramneek, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And now I invite architect Shilpa Das, a 1997 graduate from Chandigarh College of Architecture. Architect Shilpa Das set up her practice, Evolve Architecture, in 2006 in Chandigarh. After designing multiple standalone buildings, her professional journey led to study the impact of interstitial space on quality of her life and community. Her engagement with the issues of Chandigarh began with the 1999 International Conference celebrating Chandigarh 50 years of the idea. In 2017, she founded the society ACT Chandigarh along with other like-minded architects, and with their collective efforts, Chandigarh Urban Festival was launched on 25 March 2018, and she will be introducing our today's theme. Over to you, Architect Shilpa Das.
Thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful words. A very good afternoon to one and all connected with us here today. This webinar is the beginning of a very important conversation. A conversation with the citizens of Chandigarh about the present and future of our beloved city beautiful. Conversation about involving everybody in the process and journey of Chandigarh from here to the future. On behalf of ACT Chandigarh and Sakar Foundation, I extend my gratitude to everyone who has helped to provide shape to this platform. I'm grateful to the Embassy of Switzerland, the Indian Institute of Architects, all our institutional partners, and Ultratech Cement for their support. Process of Chandigarh, carrying forward the legacy of Le Corbusier and Pierre Genre, a tri-webinar series and public discussion. I'm here to elaborate upon the theme of the event for easy understanding of all. A Hindi version will also be shared on social media. Chandigarh, our city beautiful. Designed by Le Corbusier. Chandigarh was born to be great. It was the result of coming together of a unique set of circumstances. Even though at one time it had everything going for it, quite early on in its journey, things changed. Chandigarh we see around today seems to be struggling on multiple fronts. Let's take a while to look at a few facets of our city. Chandigarh was envisioned to be the new capital of Punjab to replace Lahore that was lost during partition. It was created out of widespread chaos and destruction. It therefore symbolizes the indestructible spirit of Punjabis and Punjabiyat, their indomitable will for significant creation. Conceived at the dawn of independence, Chandigarh aspired to symbolize democracy, freedom, and a progressive vision of the future Indian city. This was a time when the spirit of nation building and patriotic fervor was at a crescendo. As an idea, Chandigarh was bold, futuristic, is considered the most significant and daring experiment in architecture and urban planning of the 20th century. We might say that the above qualities exist in the DNA of our city. Also, the cutting-edge technology of that area, that was exposed concrete, was used with great perfection in Chandigarh by the master craftsman Le Corbusier. Not many are aware that the Capitol complex in Sector 1 symbolizes our democratic ideals. The three monumental buildings, the legislature, the High Court, and the Secretariat, flank the magnificent People's Plaza and give physical form to these ideals. Similarly, the open-hand monument at the Capitol, open to give and open to receive against the backdrop of majestic shivaliks, and the pit of contemplation that we have visited so many times, they were the ideal setting for reflecting upon these principles. Needless to say that Chandigarh was the center of attention and adulation of the entire nation for a long time and a source of inspiration. Possibly, this incredible investment of resources as well as emotion of the country in Chandigarh brings a certain responsibility on the city. Coming to the planning of Chandigarh, it is important to note that Chandigarh Master Plan was developed by Corbusier in 51 to be realized in two phases for a population of 1.5 lakhs and 3.5 lakhs respectively. Another important fact is that Chandigarh was planned as a finite city with a 10-mile radius green belt for its sustenance. It was supposed to be agricultural land. Well, the city had already outgrown these figures by 1989. The city of Chandigarh is planned for the four functions of living, working, circulation, care of body and spirit. There is an analogy of the human body in the planning of Chandigarh. A clearly defined head at the capital, the heart, city center, and other parts as shown here. The stark creations by the master of modernism, Corbusier, made the entire world sit up and take notice. Chandigarh has had a deep impact on the entire generation of architects and planners all over the world. Corbusier's work is now recognized as World Heritage, and in that sense, Chandigarh belongs to the world. It can be called a world city. Understandably, there is a constant academic as well as professional interest nationally and internationally in the issues of Chandigarh. The issues from the legacy, carrying forward the legacy of the master, the issues of growth, and the best minds have shared their research and solutions. There is enough body of work to suggest that legacy is not a touch me not, preserve only subject. It just means we need to make way for changes sensitively and respectfully. Professor Philip will be sharing his perspective on the subject a little later. With the above knowledge, we now move to understand the changed scenario. This was the turning point in the history of Chandigarh. Reorganization of the state of Punjab in 1966. The lack of consensus between Haryana and Punjab led to the status of UT for the city. The 10-mile periphery, designated for its growth and sustenance, was divided between the two states. And the 114-kilometer area of Chandigarh, that included only 3.3% of the periphery, became landlocked. As a UT, Chandigarh administration came to be regulated by some well-established conventions, but major and minor adjustments to Corbusian instructions were continuously made without statutory procedure. Efforts for an integrated growth strategy with the two state governments that allows for the original intent of the capital to flourish have been ongoing since 1975 under a high-powered committee under chairmanship of Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, but without success. Some of the probable reasons could be lack of political will, vested interests of a few, absence of a clear mandate from the people of the region, or lack of legislation to enforce coordinated growth. Like we all experienced recently during lockdowns, the barriers between the people added enormously to the difficulties we faced. The lack of regional coordination definitely does not sound good, especially after we know about the ideals our city represents. How many of us feel that way? Moving on, our city continued to grow. New townships in both states developed rapidly on the periphery of Chandigarh, and the word Tri-City became prevalent for some time. Come to think of it, the ambitious planned city of our country was relegated to decades of unplanned growth and development within as well as outside of the periphery, which then saw rapid urbanization. Even within the city, the decisions for development have been implemented in an ad hoc and piecemeal manner in the absence of statutory powers to the Corbusier's master plan, as already mentioned. Now we shall connect with the living and growing city we see around us, the positive and inclusive developments, along with a quick recap of the issues heard and seen in the public realm. The Municipal Corporation of Chandigarh came into existence in 1994, comprises of 35 members, out of which 26 are elected, and serves for a period of 5 years. The term of the mayor is only 1 year though, and under the 74th constitutional amendment, certain functions have to be transferred to the MC from the administration, but the division of these functions continues to cause confusion and frictions in Chandigarh. Keeping in view the controversies generated by the approval of various projects in the past, Chandigarh Administrator and Governor of Punjab, Shivraj Patil, constituted the AAC, Administrators Advisory Council, to guide him on various issues pertaining to the development of the UT in 2010. The members of the AAC are directly nominated by the incumbent UT administrator. Chandigarh Heritage Conservation Committee was constituted in 2012 to advise the administration on the matters related to identification, protection, conservation and maintenance of Chandigarh's heritage. The committee, headed by the advisor to the administrator, derives its mandate from the approved report of the expert committee. The committee is headed by advisor to the administrator and derives its mandate from the approved report of the expert committee for conservation and preservation of the heritage of Chandigarh and was notified on 23/12/11. As an outcome of a PIL, the High Court issued directions for preparing Master Plan of Chandigarh and also an interstate regional plan for the Tri-City in February 2009. The Master Plan of Chandigarh, CMP 2031, was prepared, approved, and finally notified after a long drawn consultative and democratic process of 6 years in April 2015. So how is it faring? The master plans of states of Punjab and Haryana, meanwhile, in respect to peripheral area surrounding Chandigarh, were separately notified. Now, a quick recap of the issues heard and seen in the public realm recently. Issues pertaining to living areas provided to economically weaker sections, a crucial component of our development and society. Issues pertaining to so-called violations of CMP 2031, the capital issue, involvement of high-end user in planning for revitalization of 17 or implementation of the right to livelihood, the survival threats to our Sukna Lake, issues pertaining to the image of our city, this was a little background to our conversation today. As we stand here in Chandigarh, having this conversation with the citizens of the region and every stakeholder who loves and cares for the city of Chandigarh, this event aims to bring forth opinions of all stakeholders on one platform. The discussion is structured in 3 webinars, spaced 2 weeks apart, and a social media platform has been created for continuity of dialogue. The session 1 today will cover legacy and vision. Session 2 on April 9, we will learn about various components in the functioning of the city. Session 3 on April 22 will focus on public participation methods and effectiveness. I request everyone to stay connected on Facebook and Instagram handles for the entire duration of the event. Today in the session, we have Senior Advocate Manmohan Lal Sareen joining us to share his experience of living and working in the city for last 66 years. Professor Philip Ursprung will talk about the legacy of Corbusier and share his views on what happens when contemporary becomes history. Architect Sumit Kaur, former Chief Architect of Chandigarh, will explain the new vision of CMP 2031, its implementation strategy, monitoring, and challenges. Architect author Surinder Bhaga will then talk to us about the past, present, and future of the city. Some insightful videos from local experts will also be available on social media pages to carry forward the conversation. Everyone is invited to participate with their views. ACT Chandigarh is a registered society of practicing architects and concerned citizens working towards a sustainable future of Chandigarh region. We aim to act as an interface to bring together diverse sections of society for a meaningful engagement with the city. Chandigarh Urban Festival is a brainchild of ACT Chandigarh. This is a celebration of people, Chandigarh, and togetherness. These annual activities, which involve a city celebration, neighborhood initiative, and intellectual discourse on issues of the city, form part of CUF. Chandigarh da Tashan, Apna Shahar Apna Jashan. CUF was launched today on this day 3 years back. Happy birthday CUF and congratulations Chandigarh. In the end, let's stop to think, what are the fundamental emotions that bind us as human beings? A laugh, feeling loss and grief, concern for our children, our next generation, the blessings of nature, leaving a safer planet. We all go through this. And once we recognize this, we unite. Once together, is there any aim too big? In the end, I have to say that the best thing about Chandigarh is the people. Almost everyone who has stayed in the city, who has worked in the city, or just visited as a tourist feels highly optimistic to be here. I have seen the city inspire its people like none other, making them want to achieve more, do their bit, give back. It is high time the issues of Chandigarh were discussed threadbare in the public domain. I am sure each of you will enjoy being a part of the process of Chandigarh. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And you have underlined that despite the glorious conception and considerable investment of resources of an entire nation in the city, Chandigarh has been struggling for quite a long time. And for Chandigarh to stay relevant as an example for the rest of the country, the issues surrounding it must be discussed threadbare in the public domain. I would also like to add that Punjab University, Chandigarh, in the former years have organized many conferences and exhibitions on the life and works of Le Corbusier and period genre. And now I welcome His Excellency Dr. Ralph Peckham. Before embarking on a career in the Swiss Foreign Service in 1997, Mr. Heckner was a research assistant at the University of Fribourg, Switzerland, where he earned his PhD in contemporary history. Since September 2015, ambassador to Kenya, with concurrent accreditations to Burundi, Rwanda, Somalia, and Uganda, he serves as a permanent representative to UNON as well. Since September 2020, he is serving as ambassador in New Delhi. And now I request him to introduce the theme of today's session. Over to you, sir.
It's a great pleasure to be with all of you. It was fascinating to learn more about Chandigarh, thanks to Mrs. Das. Thank you very much. I'm not an architect, and I know that here are quite a number of architects and urban planners and students of architecture. But as an ambassador to Kenya, I learned and experienced firsthand the importance of architecture for me as an ambassador, because the Swiss Confederation was building a new chancellery, a new embassy building in Nairobi. And when we moved in, I could clearly feel that managing and leading my staff was much easier in the new embassy building. And the embassy building was perceived and planned in a way that brought the whole staff together, and the collaboration among the staff members improved. So what I experienced as ambassador to Kenya with a new embassy building is for sure also true for cities. And today we are discussing the legacy and the heritage of the city of Chandigarh and how to create a more sustainable city in the future. And I'm very happy to be here with the Saka Foundation, Le Corbusier Foundation, and ACT Chandigarh, and opening the first of 3 webinars on this particularly interesting subject. And as was already mentioned, the next webinars will be on the 9th and 22nd of April, and I'm looking forward to meeting you then again. So the city of Chandigarh is having a certain importance for all of us, depending on where we come from. As a Swiss and also for sure as a French citizen, Chandigarh has a relationship with a Swiss-French citizen, and that is Le Corbusier, the planner of Chandigarh, but also with the cousin of Le Corbusier, Jean Hérin, who was architect of Chandigarh. And for the Indian people, Chandigarh means the start of a new urban design, modern urban design, a vision of how the independent India would like to construct and plan further and many more modern cities after Chandigarh. And this was definitely a vision that the Indian government had, and Chandigarh as a city has a vision. And I was struck to feel that vision of that city when I visited Chandigarh in January this year, and a week ago again. And no wonder Chandigarh turned into a World Heritage City in 2018, and it is now moving forward to turn into a sustainable, a smart city in 2030. So there's again a vision that you can feel when it comes to Chandigarh and also India. But cities with such a legacy and a footprint worldwide, they share, I would say, common challenges, and that is clearly housing, urban design solutions. And because of the urbanization that is happening on all over the world, you will have questions and issues of infrastructure or also mobility, and the same applies to climate change. And as was mentioned before, I was ambassador to Kenya in Nairobi, but I was also permanent representative of Switzerland to the United Nations Environmental Programme and to UN Habitat, dealing with sustainable cities. So what we are discussing today here has been also part of my job description in my position before in Nairobi. So Chandigarh is facing for sure the same challenges as all the other cities, and therefore I think a question would be, is Le Corbusier's plan and planning for Chandigarh continues to be that plan able to adapt to the needs of the changing needs? Is the planned city of Chandigarh also in the future able to adapt to the new challenges? I was personally struck to see in 2021 a planned city that was full of life after all these decades. So in my assessment, the Le Corbusier plan and all the people who had been working on it showed that it was possible to create a village from scratch that could adapt to the challenges of the decades after. Now let me conclude by referring to Switzerland shortly. Switzerland, when it comes to sustainable cities, believes that whatever is being done today to improve the standard of living of our people in cities, it has to be done in a sustainable way. You have to do that in a dialogue with all the stakeholders. So you need experts of architecture and urban planning. You need policymakers that are listening to them. You need also the citizens that are willing to participate in that process and bearing also a part of the responsibility. And you also need conservationists that are trying to preserve what is important to be preserved when it comes to the legacy and the history of our cities. And I think this multi-stakeholder approach that I'm talking about, what I call a dialogue, is also very much represented today here at this webinar, because the three organizing institutions were absolutely able to bring together so many stakeholders to discuss this issue. When it comes to Switzerland, urban design, architecture, engineering, this is all also part and parcel of the Swiss DNA. And for that reason, I'm also very happy to see Professor Philipp Ursprung from the Polytechnical High School in Zurich with us today. I'm very much looking forward to hearing the Swiss perspective from you. But this is a webinar of experts and not a webinar where I should speak for too long. I'm very much looking forward now to an intellectual trip when it comes to sustainable urban design, and I'm very much looking forward to the results of the 3 webinars that we are launching today. Thank you very much for inviting me and for making this possible.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for giving us the introduction. And traveling exhibition, a dream realized, on works of Swiss-born architects Le Corbusier and Pierre-Jeanneret was showcased in Bombay, Kolkata, New Delhi, Chandigarh, Ahmedabad, Nagpur, Chennai, Jalandhar, etc. And it was in Swiss collaboration. And for the first session, I welcome Senior Advocate Manmohan Lal Sareen. Senior Advocate Shri Manmohan Lal Sareen is one of the early settlers in the city of Chandigarh. He sees the role of a lawyer to be the forefront of society leading the change. A resident of Chandigarh since 1955, a member of the bar since 1971, a senior advocate practicing at the High Court of Punjab and Haryana at Chandigarh since 1987, Shri M.L. Sareen, or Max Sareen as he is known within the city, has done precisely that. He has led the cause of Chandigarh from the front during many crucial moments of the city, and today he will share his views on living in Chandigarh. I welcome Manmohan Lal Sareen, sir.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency. Good afternoon, all the friends and lovers of Chandigarh. It gives me great pleasure to share my experiences of living in this beautiful city since the 1st of January 1955. To start with, I realized how important Chandigarh's connection with Switzerland was when about 23 years ago, I was in Zurich and I came across the 10 franc note, which shows Corbusier on one side and some buildings from Chandigarh on the other. And I was so happy to see the ramp right on top, that is ramp outside court number 1 in the High Court, where I've been practicing since 1st of July 1971. How come I came and lived in a city which I didn't even know about or didn't exist the day I was born? My father was a lawyer practicing in Lahore. He and my mother had to leave suddenly, along with my 3 siblings, at the partition of the country in 1947. The High Court shifted to Simla, and that's where he practiced till the concept and idea of Chandigarh was born. And the first building in the capital complex to be completed was the High Court. So the High Court shifted down from Simla to Chandigarh on the 1st of January 55, and I, along with my family, came down to live here since then. And I think I have been one of the luckiest persons in the whole world to have come here. When my father, who was already a refugee, he had very little money in his pocket, came and applied for a plot of land, which is 2,500 square yards, and paid 12,500 rupees. Everybody thought that my father was a madman. He's gone and invested money out in the jungle where you don't even get fresh vegetables which come from another city. Today, the prices have spiraled so high that I, even having won the highest income taxpayer award twice, cannot afford to buy the same land because its market value is over 4 billion rupees. But the journey through Chandigarh has been absolutely fantastic. The initial stages, most of the people who lived here were refugees from Pakistan or they were government servants. They were so jealous about protecting the planned city of Chandigarh. The powers which were given to the chief architect were so extensive that he was considered the #1 authority. And if anyone had any question about the architecture of the city, the chief architect was the final say. Pierre-Jeanneret was the chief architect. He happened to be my wife's family's next door neighbor. So they were together, they had a common wall for 9 years and knew each other extremely well. In fact, he's the one who designed my parents-in-law's house in Sector 8, though ultimately the signatures are of Mr. Jeet Malhotra because Pierre-Jean could not practice. Now, with this connection of Pierre-Jean, my sister being a student of architecture, I got involved with Corbusier. And then as a citizen, as a student of law, I got even further involved. And then I realized, my gosh, this is a city which has to be preserved at best we can, along with its planned nature. Everything went very well till 1966, the reorganization of the state of Punjab, and it was divided into Punjab, Haryana, and the Union Territory of Chandigarh. What Corbusier had planned, as Shilpa told you, a 10-mile-long belt around the city as the periphery. Now that periphery fell in Punjab and Haryana. There was power given to the collector to relax the periphery for construction purposes. Both Punjab and Haryana extensively used that power, relaxed the provisions. Punjab set up Mohali and Haryana set up Panchkula, both with the idea that one day Chandigarh will go to them and they will merge their city with the planned city of Chandigarh. But that is where we were. The third city, which was open, was attempted to be developed firstly in the state of Punjab. It was revoked when Chief Minister H.S. Barar came to power. Second time, the High Court interfered and quashed the notifications. But third time, now the so-called new Chandigarh is being constructed. Though in my opinion, the expression or the name New Chandigarh is a misnomer because it has nothing to do with Chandigarh and is not even in Chandigarh, it's in the state of Punjab. A fourth thing happened. Towards the north of the city, there was, Corbusier had always planned that will be open. It's what is called the sacrosanct space, open so that you can see the mountains from anywhere in Chandigarh. Now, there was an attempt by a large building home, that is the Tata Housing and Development Corporation, to build a township of 10,000 people. The High Court gave them clearance to go ahead with it. Some of us citizens, including my Serene Memorial Legal Aid Foundation, filed an appeal in the Supreme Court. And luckily, ultimately, the Delhi High Court decided in our favor, and the Supreme Court has upheld it. Had that township come up, it would have sounded the death knell of the city of Chandigarh, because our infrastructure, which is already very stressed, would have totally collapsed with 10,000 more people, a few thousand more vehicles, the noise pollution levels, the air pollution levels, all the entire environment of the beautiful city would have been totally destroyed. Now, in 1966, besides the periphery control, there was an office created, was known as the Chief Commissioner of Chandigarh. For 20 years, the Chief Commissioner's office continued. Normally, it was occupied by a responsible senior officer who put the interest of Chandigarh at number one and was very concerned about saving its planned nature. Then came terrorism in the early 80s. And because of exigencies of need and having the police of Punjab and Haryana under one command, the governor of Punjab was made the administrator of Chandigarh, and the chief commissioner was converted into an advisor to the administrator. Now, that was a short-time phase, but it has continued now for over almost 40 years. And that has led to a lot of problems for the city. The governor is here for a short while. The advisor, who is normally an outsider, is here for a short while. The home secretary, the finance secretaries are also government servants who come from other cadres, and they are not local people. There have been, of course, a few exceptions, but they're here for a short time. And with the political and administrative pressure, and even pressure from land developers which jumped in, there has been a lot of pressure on the chief architect and others to relax the bylaws, to relax the rules, for example, the FAR, the covered areas, etc., to a certain extent, which slowly is hurting our city, at least in the eyes of an original settler. Similarly, the apartments rules had been extended to Chandigarh. A city which is planned, if you convert a home into an apartment, that would also be ruinous. So about 10 of us, including a former chief architect, Mr. M.N. Sharma, we went to meet Mrs. Sonia Gandhi. She was the chairperson of the UPA government at that time in 2006. And thanks to her intervention, the apartments rules were revoked. There was, secondly, when the master plan was made, there was a mention of densification, but again we objected, and the apartments rules were promised not to be extended. But in reality today, our developers, smart as they are building buildings and selling them floor-wise, percentage-wise, and that is why we have filed a public interest litigation, which is pending in the High Court, that should not be allowed because it will really ruin the city. So the whole concept of the chief architect being all-powerful, we reached the stage where he does not have those powers. The administration has taken over, and due to various reasons, there are so many changes which are being brought upon. This is what is worrying us the most. But I would like to say that in 2011, I was invited to address at a colloquium in Le Chaux-de-Fonds, where Corbusier was born. And I said, Professor Evard, why are you inviting me? I'm not a town planner or an urban designer. He says, Mr. Serene, you have lived in Corbusier's city since 55, and you worked in his building since July 71. You are most qualified to talk about how successful the experience has been. I think the experience has been a fabulous success. I would not leave Chandigarh for the world. I was offered judgeship to go to Bangalore. I declined that. I prefer living in Chandigarh. But there are problems. And one of the biggest problems we are facing, and I can say that as a lawyer, is that the city of Chandigarh and the two cities outside, in Punjab and Haryana, are running on different levels. They have different rules. We need an authority which will be like the National Capital Regional Authority, which can make sure that the entire area around Chandigarh is developed harmoniously so that the infrastructure of Chandigarh is not put under stress, and yet the people can live well. As Corbusier had planned, the periphery could be used for purposes as and when needed in the future. Now, with these words, I would like to thank you all for giving me an opportunity to share my experiences. 10 minutes, unfortunately, is too short to condense my life experience of 66 years of living in this absolutely, truly city beautiful. And I could go on and on. But I would like to end that. And thank you very much. I wish the entire webinar grand success. Thank you.
So thank you so much, sir. Sir shared his experience of living in the city for the last 66 years and emphasized that citizens of Chandigarh have to be alert and proactive to prevent it from ruination by too many changes to its basic structure under so-called need-based alterations. And I would like to add that the concept of this program is a brainchild of ACT Chandigarh and architect Shilpa Das. We really appreciate your support and guidance for making this seminar a success. Also, photographic exhibition on works of Le Corbusier in India and Germany by Ms. Barbara from November 25 to December 2, 2009, in collaboration with German Ministry of Foreign Relations, German Embassy in New Delhi, and Institute of Foreign Relations, Stuttgart, Germany at Chandigarh were organized. And for the next session, I welcome Professor Philipp Usprung. Dr. Philipp is a professor of History of Art and Architecture and a former dean at the Department of Architecture of ETH Zurich, Switzerland. Trained as art historian in Geneva, Vienna, and Berlin, he has taught at Columbia University, New York, Cornell University, and at the University of Arts, Berlin. From 2015 to 2020, he directed the research project Tourism and Cultural Heritage at Future Cities Laboratory, Singapore, and he will be enlightening us on long duration, the presence of Le Corbusier. Over to you, Doctor.
Surinder Bagga kindly invited me. to share some thoughts on the future of Chandigarh. I'm grateful and honored by this invitation, but I am also overwhelmed. I have never had the chance to visit Chandigarh, and I know far less about it than most of you. I hope that you allow that I profit from our encounter to learn rather than teach about Chandigarh. The challenges, from what I have read about the city, are huge. Pressure of urbanization, uncontrolled sprawl of the periphery, traffic, and an immense plan for population growth. Surinder Bhaga, a scholar, architect, and council, has done very much to protect the city, prepare it for these challenges. This work merits our deepest respect. The open questions in regard to Chandigarh are comparable to other heritage cases. Should the core area, be turned into a museum, or can it evolve? Since Chandigarh is a vivid city, not a singular monument, since it has a model for ways of living together which applies to all people, rather than just built heritage, the answer that I propose is it should be both. Some parts should be conserved, quasi deep frozen, keeping the very substance, including the signs of aging, to allow further generations to have access points to the dimension of history. In my view, the aura of buildings partially depends on the details, the cracks in the floor, the rust, the concrete turned black, the color faded, the fact that we can perceive that they are actually becoming old. But a city is not a corpse. Therefore, most buildings should be allowed to adapt to new demands and functions without altering them too much. Most important, the inhabitants, the authorities, the administration need to be aware of the treasure they are part of. And that this treasure is not solely an assembly of central buildings, but an entire system, something like a fragile ecosystem of places, buildings, parks, streets, water arteries, and the surrounding environment. This awareness is difficult to achieve. In my experience, the best way is via the schools, the universities, the museums, the cultural centers, in other words, all those places and institutions where young people are. While I'm attending this conference remotely from my office at ETH in Zurich, Switzerland, please allow that I show you how we recently dealt with a far less prominent, yet also fragile case from the very beginning of the career of Le Corbusier. I will now play this little video. Good morning. Thanks for inviting me and thanks for listening. This is Philipp Ursprung, and the title of my presentation is Long Duration, the Presence of Le Corbusier. Last October, I made a seminar week with my students from ETH Zurich. Every semester, all the professors and students are obliged to leave school for a week. The idea is to step out of the routine of classes, get new ideas, gain new perspectives, meet new people, and travel. Since travel, study, leisure, and pleasure are inseparable, and since we depend on the tourism industry for our trips, we as a group always consider ourselves as tourists during the seminar week. Due to the pandemic, we were not allowed to leave Switzerland. I miss traveling abroad. In fact, I had never made a trip within Switzerland so far, so I decided that we spent the week walking along the Swiss-French border. According to the safety rules, we stayed the entire week outdoors, slept in single tents, and had picnics around the bonfire. Unfortunately, during the only indoor meal, I was infected by COVID. Fortunately, I had no symptoms, and the tracing worked, so we could interrupt the chain. During my 10-day isolation, I had time to reflect on the journey. The border area between Switzerland and France is known as Jura. La Chaux-de-Fonds, the birth town of Charles Jeanneret, later known as Le Corbusier, is at the heart of this area. Once a booming industrial town, the world capital of watchmaking, the place is in decline since the 1970s crisis of the watch industry. Today, it is a shadow of itself, and it is understandable that the authorities had other priorities in the late 20th and early 21st century than remember Le Corbusier. Our first venue on the seminar week was the very first building built by Le Corbusier, the Villa Jeanneret Perret, known as Maison Blanche, White House. It was completed just before the beginning of World War I in 1912. The architect then was in his 20s. He lived with his parents and his brother and designed a studio for himself in the house. He graduated from the local design school, worked mostly as interior designer for wealthy clients with a conservative taste. He had returned from a long journey, his own grand tour, that took him to the European empires that were about to decay: Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. Like a sponge, he absorbed the impressions of this travel, made sketches, photographs, notes. He expressed them into the house for his parents, which became a sort of a microcosm of spatial experiments, a recollection of memories and experiences. In fact, in this house, every room has its own dimensions, its own window formats, scholar scheme, furniture. The rooms in the house are like characters of a theater play. Like every house, in the White House, it is also a dream of being elsewhere, a space of desire for travel and for designing one's own life. A generous window opened to the forest, as if the house was in the midst of the wilderness. When one comes out of the toilet, one can imagine traveling in a ship across the ocean. Details such as a fake mosaic on the floor inspired imagination and transport the visitor to remote cultures and historical sites. And the summer room is perhaps the most extreme case of the combination of real and imaginary space, an outdoor living room with a pergola and a pavilion in the coldest city in Switzerland, covered by snow during half of the year. The architect did not succeed in building a career in his hometown, Chaux-de-Fonds. In the middle of the First World War, he moved from Switzerland to Paris. There were even less commissions there. While I sat in my isolation room, I recalled that he had experienced a far more dangerous plague. During the Spanish flu in 1918, which killed hundreds of thousands of people of his age, he took a deep breath, withdrew, wrote a book, changed his name to Le Corbusier, and changed the world of architecture. The parents who hoped that their prodigious son would have a family, come home and use their house, were disappointed. They had to sell it. Le Corbusier never mentioned the building again. Merely forgotten and empty, it was saved and restored by a private non-profit association in the early 2000s. Today, it is perfectly documented and maintained. It is a museum and can be rented for lectures and parties. Our seminar week was not about Le Corbusier alone. We were interested in the interrelation of geology, economy, politics, and space. The current pandemic and crisis are a tragedy for millions of people in most countries. And it is also a mirror for academic work. Teaching, I believe, should be better after the crisis than before. It is easy to close a campus and lock students and teachers in their rooms. The university administrations have not much choice anyway. But what can we do on the level of individual professors to keep the academic community alive? We try to find a productive way to mix physical encounters and mediated exchange, physical movement in space, and imaginary travel. In our pockets, we had Fernand Baudel's book on the Mediterranean. Written in the 1940s, while the historian was a prisoner of war in Germany, the author distinguishes three different kinds of duration. The long duration, which covers centuries and which relates history to geological spatial givens. The middle duration, that covers short-term trends over a couple of years, and the momentary event. Translated to the realm of architecture, the work of Le Corbusier is today typical for a long-duration architect. It forms a kind of sediment or horizon for architectural thinking up to the present. As a consequence, every aspect of the work becomes interesting, even those like the White House, which he himself had considered as mere preparations for his mature work and didn't publish. In fact, by eliminating a part of the past, his own past, Le Corbusier actively contributed to the ahistoric logic of what we still call modern architecture. We could also call it architecture that pretends that history does not exist, which eliminates and represses the past, which wants to forget. Fernand Braudel's concept of different historical layers reminds us that there is always a longer duration underlying what seems important at a certain moment in time. How does one deal with this phenomenon? Is this part of the built heritage or still part of our own present? Is it a document of architectural history, a closed case, or an issue that still touches us today? How does one represent this phenomenon adequately? How does one mediate it, teach it to others? The study trips with my students are for me testing grounds to develop such questions. The reactions of students are like antennas, and they allowed me to find out what is important at the current situation and what is rather part of history and the past. Of course, I can tell them that Le Corbusier is a canonical figure, but like all good students, they don't fully trust what their teachers tell them. They want to find out themselves. The White House by Le Corbusier proved a good access point, precisely because it was not so well published so far, because its images do not circulate widely. The students could find out themselves and find their own access and entry points. They could look over the shoulder of the architect, so to speak, identify themselves with his testing and failure and his concerns and dreams. The setting put them in a situation of discovery, as if they were among the first to encounter something beyond the beaten paths. Architecture cannot be exhibited like works of art and design. Architecture is also difficult to collect because one can never keep it completely to oneself, and one has to take care and share it. This is precisely what makes the display of architectural objects so exciting. Buildings cannot really be curated and controlled like exhibition. An immediate, unmediated confrontation is always possible. Unlike a work of art, we can touch it, walk through it, spend time. The White House in La Chaux-de-Fonds, the first building by Le Corbusier, as a hybrid between museum and accessible space for events, between canonical masterpiece and testing ground, between success and failure, proves how this experience remains fruitful up to the present day. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for watching this little video. I'm back in my office in Zurich, Switzerland, and I hope that my little film, a kind of a postcard that I sent to you all, can contribute to the discussion. What is crucial, again, is that students, visitors, tourists can make discoveries by themselves and are not confronted by an environment or objects which is totally controlled and curated. Entry points are essential. They keep the access open. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, sir. And following the concept of long duration by French historian Bernard Braudel, the presentation raises the question of the transition of Le Corbusier's work from the contemporary to the historical. What happens when architecture becomes a cultural heritage? How can a monument stay alive? So that was all answered in his presentation. And I would like to add that architect Surinder Baga has authored books on Le Corbusier and period genre named as On the Footprints of Le Corbusier. So now for the next session, I welcome architect Sumit Kaur, former Chief Architect, Chandigarh Administration. She led the present preparation of the Chandigarh Master Plan 2031 as well the present preparation of the dossier of the Capitol Complex Chandigarh to UNESCO World Heritage status as the part of Trans-Border serial nomination of the architecture works of Le Corbusier. A passionate person full of infectious enthusiasm and positivity, Sumit ma'am has been actively involved in the growth of issues of Chandigarh. Today, she will take us through the new vision of the city of Chandigarh as outlined in CMP 2031, a vision for the sustainable development of the city. Beautiful. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, all. I'm delighted to be joining you all on this discussion today. I hope you're all well and keeping safe. Le Corbusier, the master architect of Chandigarh, had envisaged an important role for the citizens of the city and even addressed an edict of Chandigarh for them. I will begin today's presentation from the year 2008, when we actually started working of the master plan for Chandigarh. Given the tight schedule we have today, I will quickly take you through some of the main recommendations of the plan to bring alive the vision and the way forward. While preparing the Chandigarh master plan, we made sure that we involved the public in the decision making to gauge their perceptions and their aspirations. When the draft master plan was ready, we put it on for notification and a board of inquiry and hearing was constituted, which actually gave them a personal hearing to come and give their views. The recommendations which the people made were analyzed and thereafter put into the master plan before it was finally notified. This master plan thus is the vision of the people for the Chandigarh. I'm delighted that Swiss Embassy. Good evening to one and all. Le Corbusier's plan for Chandigarh left the legacy of a well-designed city as per Siam principles and neighborhood concept, with citizens as the guardians and as per Statute of Land and the Edict of Chandigarh. Over time, the piecemeal planning around the periphery to add new mega projects such as amusement park, theme park, aquariums, modern terminal markets, etc., made the citizens take their role seriously and demand for a concerted master plan. The civil writ petition forced the court to take cognizance and issue directions to prepare the master plan for the remaining part of the periphery of Chandigarh, to prepare a composite regional plan for the Tri-City and not to acquire the remaining lands in the periphery. An 11-member master plan committee was constituted. I was fortunate to be at the helm as chief architect at that time and had a great opportunity to lead this effort to save the very soul of the city I love. The master plan area 2031 included the entire area under the jurisdiction of the Chandigarh administration, which is the 70 square kilometers of the original plan and the 3% share of its subdivided periphery. The existing land use plan, which was put together, shows that the master plan had, extended much beyond the original boundaries of the Patiala Ki Rao and the Sukna Chowk, accommodating new uses as the city grew and flourished. The industrial area phase 3, IT park, and the Saranpur institutional area, plus a whole lot of sectors southern end, were the new uses that were accommodated over time. The availability of land leaves only around 3,000 acres in the periphery and some brown patches that you see in the rest of the city scattered across. The planning which the neighboring states were doing was extensive, and the Gamada regional plan had 7 towns for a population of 4.5 million, and Haryana was preparing plans for 10 lakh by 2021. So we see a total of 12 towns plus Chandigarh, 13 towns within a city, within a region which was meant for one city with a green 16-kilometer around it. The challenges that emerged from all this scenario were the major concerns for cities' sustainability, the urbanization, its landlocked status, with no scope for horizontal expansion, the dependence of the neighboring states on the green cities' infrastructure, inadequate transportation, insensitive approach to energy efficiency, siltation of the Sukna Lake, and the noise and air pollution. Having no power and water of its own, it had begun to face inadequacies because the population had more than doubled than was of the 5 lakhs that was envisaged. Large volumes of waste started reaching the landfill sites. The government of India also took note of the heritage aspects of the city and constituted an expert heritage committee, of which I was also a member. And I think this came at a very fortunate time while we were trying to examine what we need to, preserve and declare as heritage, and on the other hand, what we and how the city should go. This committee was tasked to look at the original concept and how the heritage buildings of Chandigarh should be protected, preserved, and maintained, and also how the problems arising of the expansion of the city should be dealt with. So it was a holistic exercise of the heritage aspects which were also examined in detail. The government approved the recommendations of the HCC and the heritage zones, heritage precincts, natural areas, and vistas with clear-cut direction that to respect the original planning concepts, the harmonious urban form, and to maintain the city as a low-rise, low-density city, coordinate development with the region, and also attend to the mobility aspects by going for an underground metro irrespective of the cost. The vision of master plan was first to uphold the administrative character of the city, and then also to develop it as a knowledge center, education hub, health care hub, and to reduce the spatial and economic disparities, provide housing for all, and conserve its architectural and planning idiom. Enhance the green city character for which it is well known and on which it's that is its USP, and also to take Chandigarh forward as a model Chandigarh model solar city, reducing the ecological footprint and climate change. There was need for public transportation and also a pedestrian and bicycle friendly. The city had all these aspects and could take them forward in great gusto. So the open space, which were gradually being diverted to other uses, was a cause of real concern, and the city would lose on its, green and sun space and verdure character, which are the 3 planning postulates of the city. So the open space as a land use was declared inviolable. There was a need to actually look at connecting these segregated, green belts and leisure valleys, and to network them, intertwine them, presently being intercepted by busy vehicular arteries. So there is a need to develop an open space system, and with pedestrian, cycle greenways and nature walking trails that can extend into the region, Chandigarh can easily become the walking city and the bicycle capital of the country. There is need to activate the greaves in many ways, as can be seen from these pictures. Preserving the sacred north of the capital complex and leaving the hills ecologically and visually undisturbed was one of the major, considerations which the master plan undertook, and made recommendations very strongly against a Tata Camelot project that was coming through. Besides the environmental aspects, of the catchment area of the Sukna Lake and the Sukna Wildlife Sanctuary that has emerged because of the extensive forestations that Chandigarh had done to save the lake. There was need to protect the natural rivulets and the joes also. So to preserve it, the north, it was, we really brainstormed as to what could go there and actually give something back to the city. We thought that we had lost the green belt to urbanization, so we could introduce urban agriculture within the city, which would also help in a large extent to provide for food security. And not only on the north, in other areas of the city also, a total of 672 acres has thus been reserved for agriculture. The ecology and environment needed to protect the flora and fauna, the natural rivulets and the shores, 450 acres of wildlife corridor linking the wildlife sanctuary with Sukna Reserve Forest for easy movement of the, animals. They have been targeted by vehicles and many killed. A need for an eco-sensitive zone was also a mandate, and that has been notified. The Patiala Kirao and Sukna Cho and Enchos have been notified as eco-sensitive zones. The population which the city would actually go up to by way of different projections was calculated and found to be 20 lakhs. But how much could the city hold in view of retaining its essence of the original master plan and its low-rise city character? And the limited availability of vacant land put the holding capacity to 16 lakhs. The rest needed to be diverted to adjoining settlements by viewing the entire context of planning in the regional framework. It is to keep the high quality of life which the Chandigarh, really is proud of intact. It is recommended city level and neighborhood level infill is required and essential, which was calculated in great detail sector-wise. In addition, city-level specific requirements of the expansion of the High Court, the Punjab University, the PGI, warehousing, decongesting the grain market, additional dumping ground, transport nagar, etc., were also looked into very carefully and have been accommodated into the plan. The Chandigarh has been working towards, providing for the urban poor to a large extent. It even backed the, Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Mission Award, and we were proud recipients of it. But there is need also to look at it holistically to address all the socio-economic sections and address aberrations for which a holistic housing policy needs to be put in place for judicious use and optimum use, no plotted development. And Chandigarh is looking at a slum-free city with 8 pockets identified to rehabilitate all the slum dwellers of the biometric survey conducted in 2006. To ensure that there are no slums in future, 50% of the dwelling units are to be reserved for EWS. And it is also the responsibility of the neighboring states to ensure that they augment housing for the urban poor. A new concept of rental housing scheme was also advocated. Urban villages, there are about 23 both in the sectoral and the non-sectoral villages which were absorbed into the planning of Chandigarh. And they have not, got the attention they required, though they have been paying back to the city in many ways and accommodating many uses which the city per se failed to do so. But in the absence of any regulations, a lot of obnoxious activities have happened and there are incompatible uses. So a holistic development plans for each of the villages, both outside, inside, respecting the history and the unique character need to be drawn up. And this can also help promote rural tourism. Chandigarh should be proud that it already has a 10-minute neighborhood embedded in its city's DNA, while the other countries across the globe are trying to make it happen. But we need to actually have policies for neighborhood schools and infill social infrastructure and actually walk the sector rather than drive. There is need to take the neighborhood concept to another level of self-sufficiency in terms of water, power, sewerage, solid waste disposal, add green buildings, green solar rooftops, and there is a lot of scope for improvement in making a neighborhood a self-sustainable unit. Solid waste management is a big challenge to be addressed collectively because we have exhausted the dumping ground and have no ideal site for it, even though we have located a site in the master plan's periphery. And we clearly mentioned this is not the right location, and Punjab government has been requested to help in the matter, provide an alternative site. But I think it's the responsibility of every single individual to reduce waste so that minimum goes to the dumping ground. And we can do it. Waste can be looked at as a resource. There is inspiration in the form of rock garden within the city itself. Commercial areas provide opportunity for placemaking and becoming vibrant cultural nodes rather than just for shopping and coming back, without any participatory activity. The urban design of the city center needs to be completed with the 11-story tower and the 2 iconic buildings, new planning concepts in the shopping centers yet to be developed, and neighborhood shopping centers particularly need to be transformed from parking lots to places for people where people can come together to pause, rest, outdoor cafes, public art, street theater, and celebrate cultural activities together. Industrial area phase 1 and phase 2 has been subjected to ad hoc decisions and policies by allowing conversion from industrial to commercial to large plots, which have also, while it has generated malls, it has also led to traffic, spoiled the urban design, and disturbed the hierarchical distribution of commercial centers. Holistic urban renewal plans thus need to be drawn up, and intense use of the phase 3, which is yet to be done, is through flatted factory is recommended. Mixed use development, unlike the standalone uses of the original plan, here is a departure that 7.2 kilometer long has at the end of Corbusian's second phase sectors has been proposed for mixed use with a strong urban design statement and placemaking. This will be a pedestrian promenade where people can interact and where this will also extend into the leisure valley. The north-south divide will suddenly change over, and the southern sectors will definitely get an asset in their area. Now, all of us face the brunt of traffic, and I think we are responsible for it because of our car-centric, attitudes in planning and providing for the cars. We have a very poor public transportation system, but planning for traffic cannot be done in isolation of the region with which it has a daily interaction. So a comprehensive mobility plan aligned to the National Urban Transport Policy has been put across in the master plan with MRTS, BRTS, feeder buses, and non-motorized transport, along with commuter rails and regional roads. This needs to be implemented. Since the region is expanding further than this Tri-City, we need a preparation of an integrated interstate regional traffic plan. Cycling should now become a mode of travel and walkability also to ensure last mile connectivity. While Chandigarh administration has taken on providing cycle tracks along arterial roads and public bike sharing, the V7 and V8 should also be implemented in equal gusto. We need to reclaim the space for pedestrians through universal accessibility, streetscaping, and integrated services, using the best of practices. The perspective plan for Chandigarh, in terms of land use, the colors which you see are the new additional areas of institutional buildings accommodating all the uses which I mentioned, some housing and an IT park, industrial area, and also non-sectoral villages for their development, and a second grain market to decongest the market within, warehousing, and also bulk material market. We've also left some scope for future expansion. Around the periphery, green belts have been accommodated wherever it has been possible. Within sectoral grade, the rock garden and the other, memory garden and sport complex have been regularized. The regional context, which is essential, in fact, was part and parcel of Corbusier's plan, as I've said, has been diluted. But now this CMP expects a symbiotic relationship with all that has emerged in the region and needs to prepare an interstate regional plan to dissipate rather than to continue to concentrate around Chandigarh. Let's not build another Delhi, build more towns, build more Chandigarhs. A new metropolitan plan for the perspective year 2031, coordinating the current master plan of Chandigarh, the Gamada plan, the regional plan, and the Haryana development plan to protect environment, agricultural zones, preserve heritage, mobility, spillover infrastructure, affordable housing, solid waste management, and disaster management needs to be put in place at once. Constitution of a regional planning board on the line of NCRP and act also on the lines needs to be implemented if this gem of a city which we have is to be safeguarded. Otherwise, it'll go like all the other cities have grown, in an unplanned manner. Chandigarh master plan is the first statutory master plan of the city. We have respected Corbusier's plan and upheld it, but now we have a legal document which is binding. Let's not make ad hoc decisions and planning. The master plan has already helped us in many ways. It helped us strengthen the management plan for the capital complex. It has helped fight the legal battle against the Tata Camelot high-rise project on the north, which would have ruined the urban design and damaged the environment. There is need now that we are almost halfway through the time frame. 2031 is also fast approaching, to implement the master plan's recommendation, both regional and city level, in full earnestness with citizen participation, having a dedicated master plan in cell, reviewing the timelines that are put in place. There is also need to formulate a comprehensive town and country planning act for the UT of Chandigarh. We are aware and conscientious people of an evolving world. Nurturing this world-class city beautiful is in our hands. Let it flourish. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And today again, Chandigarh is now a mature city with newly arrived metropolis. With its city-proud residents, it is awaiting to be nurtured into its future with great care and sensitivity, maintaining its distinct character, bracing challenges, and rising to modern-day aspirations and responsibilities. And for the next session, I welcome architect Surinder Baga, architect author from Chandigarh. He's co-authored 3 books, and one of them is Le Corbusier and Periphery Control Act, Footprints on the Sands of Indian Architecture. He has researched on a traveling exhibition, A Dream Realized, on the works of Le Corbusier and Periphery Control Act for Swiss Arts Council. He was chairman of Chandigarh Municipal Corporation's Committee for Buildings and Roads. Recently, he has been appointed as head of Chandigarh chapter of FSAI and chairman of GEM Punjab chapter. Now he will be addressing our audience. He will be conducting a session on Chandigarh, present and future. Over to you, Baga sir.
Good evening, friends. My topic is Chandigarh, present and future. I will be talking about the new challenges in Chandigarh city and what should be done in future to safeguard the great modern heritage of this city beautiful. In brief, Periphery Control Act was enacted in the year 1952. The aim was to provide areas for meeting daily needs of residents like vegetables and fruits. And it was aimed also at preserving the character of the area, and 16 kilometers belt was kept reserved for this purpose. Then gradually some encroachments have happened over the years in the periphery, and this act, the Periphery Act, has lost its relevance. Now we feel that this act requires to be recast, keeping in view the ground realities, so that whatever is left should be saved and no further damage can happen to this great city. We feel that formation of a statutory body by the Government of India to regulate development in the periphery of the Tri-City, and that is including Chandigarh, Panchkula and Mohali, is very important, and this can control the violations and unplanned developments happening in this region. Few years back, these Tata Towers came, the proposal of Tata Towers came, and it was a very dangerous proposal to damage the city. Just a half a kilometer on the backside of the famous Capitol complex, a developer has come up with a proposal to build 1,719 apartments, and they were planning to build 19 towers, which are as high as 35 stories, and the site was about 53 acres. It was a huge project in between the Shivalik Hills and the Capitol complex. Then we at the Indian Institute of Architects have organized a seminar, and we protested against this development, and the struggle went on for many years, and ultimately this project was scrapped. Then few years back, the Punjab government came up with another ambitious plan to build a city called Anandgarh on the periphery of Chandigarh, in the area which was falling in the state of Punjab. The claim by the government was that it will stop the unregulated development in that area, and we will be able to take the spillover of the Chandigarh city, and it was nicely planned and all that factor was done. But there was a huge resentment against this proposal, and at that time Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee was approached by architect Jeet Malhotra to cancel this proposal, and Prime Minister rightly agreed, and ultimately this project was dropped. Then after a few years, in the year 2013, the Punjab government came up with another proposal, which is called New Chandigarh. And New Chandigarh is a revised version of Anandgarh Sahib, the Anandgarh project. And the only difference is that they shifted the location of this project slightly from the previous one. And the claims still remain the same, that spillover of the projected growth of Chandigarh and Mohali will be taken care by this new city. This is the proposed city center development plan given by the government, and ultimately they could sail through, and this new city is coming up. So far as statistics are concerned, the total projected population of New Chandigarh is little more than 1 million, and it is spread over an area of 15,000 acres. And in addition to the residential areas, the city is proposed to have Medi City and Education City, etc. Now talking about the traffic congestion. Chandigarh is designed for a 500,000 population, and now it has touched the figure of 1.2 million. And we have registered vehicles in Chandigarh which are around 1 million. So the vehicular density is too high, and it is something like 878 registered motor vehicles per 1,000 persons, which is the highest in this nation. And to cope with such problems, the government and the authorities are coming up with different plans. And in the recent past, there was a proposal to build a Tribune flyover. This project was highly opposed by the city residents because there was a move to cut about 700 fully grown up trees which were falling in that stretch. And in addition to that, the studies have indicated that this flyover will solve hardly any problem, and it would rather complicate other problems in the area, besides spoiling the character of the city. And project is still pending. So far controlling the population, controlling the traffic at the rotaries is concerned, Corbusier gave a 4-phased developmental plan for the rotaries. You know, in this sketch, it is indicated that in the phase 1, we will have rotary. In the phase 2, we will have slip roads, which are added into this. And in the phase 3, we will have a underpasses, and in the 4th phase, we will have overpasses. This was the proposal given by Corbusier himself to solve the problem of traffic congestion at the rotaries. And in the year 97, government has engaged a organization called Crafts. They have been engaged to study the traffic problem of the city, and they submitted a report in 99, and this report indicated that which roundabouts are required to be removed, which roads required to be widened, and so on. But good or bad, this proposal remained on papers only. And from time to time, there are proposals to build some underpasses. There are about more than 7 to 8 locations where underpasses were thought of, but hardly anyone is built so far. So these are different proposals which are coming from administration side. Few years back, there was a proposal to have a Chandigarh metro rail. And this ambitious project was costing something like 14,000 crores. And when we at Indian Institute of Architects have undertaken a study of this project, and we found with the full facts and figures that this metro project is not feasible for a city like Chandigarh. There are various financial reasons, there are various technical reasons, and we prepared a proper report and submitted to the concerned authorities. And we also fear that if we construct this metro project, the proposed flyovers and stations will ruin the heritage character of the city. And besides that, it will not solve the traffic problem. This is our opinion. Then we had a meeting with the Indian Home Minister in July 2017, and when those facts and figures were brought in front of him in the entire committee, which the committee was dedicated to the development of the Chandigarh city, and the Home Minister right away announced that scrap this project because it is not feasible. And I was a member of that committee. Then UT administration, that is Chandigarh administration, has also proposed to construct a ring road around the city. And it is believed that nearly 150,000 vehicles from the adjoining states enter the city daily, and that is one of the main root cause for congestion in this belt. In Chandigarh, we have a great heritage of these unique kind of signage designed by Periphery Control. And on the left, you can see many of these signboards are in a miserable condition and in a bad condition. We wrote to the government that it should be taken care, it should be preserved because it's part of our precious heritage. But it was not taken care, and under the smart city movement, these new butterfly signages of the blue color is installed. We said, okay, you go ahead with this, but at least preserve those heritage signboards, but it has not happened. Likewise, Chandigarh is facing a huge problem of slums. You know, something like 1/3 of city's population was living in slums at a given point of time. And it has happened because of the fact that there was no provision for housing for the urban poor in the planning of Chandigarh. And even later on, the policymakers and the administration has never taken care that where the poor people will stay who are service providers. The red dots in this Chandigarh plan are indicating the location of some of the slum areas. You can see how slums have cropped up in this city beautiful at different locations and on many locations. Then few years back, the government of India has come up with a plan to build small apartments for accommodating these slum dwellers. Something like 25,000 houses were required to be made, and this ambitious plan has taken over, and many of the flats are already built, and people are living there. So these are some of the problems which problems and issues which are plaguing our city. I now, to conclude this session, I would like to recommend some proposals from my side. I feel that a central controlling authority should be created, which will take care for the development of the entire Tri-City, because the problem is not pertaining to Chandigarh. The problem is gone furthermore, and we should include Mohali and Panchkula into the whole system. There's a lack of coordination between different governments, and a comprehensive master plan for the entire Tri-City should be made. We have independent plans for each city, but there's no comprehensive plan. There's no integrity of one plan with another plan. And Chandigarh is suffering from land scarcity, and we should initiate projects of re-densification of phase 1 of Chandigarh, and also attempts should be made to complete the leftover projects. Sukhna Lake is suffering from siltation, and we propose that there's a need to make check dams within the city and in the catchment area of the Sukhna Lake, so that this siltation problem is solved, and this rainwater harvesting can be done simultaneously. In addition to that, there's a need to provide some reserved areas in the new proposals where service class people can be accommodated, and the slum development should not be occurring thereafter. And our villages are not in a very good condition. We need to make certain policies and programs for the betterment of villages. And wherever we have slums in the city, we feel that there's no need to relocate those slum areas. We can provide adequate facilities for the slum dwellers there and then only, and that will solve the problem to a great deal. And in order to create more green areas for the Tri-City, we propose that now is the time to create 2 more leisure valleys along Sukhna Chowk and on the Patiali Ki Rao. So this will solve the problem of gardens in the city. Thank you so
Thank you so much, Architect Surendra Baga, sir. So Architect Surendra Baga explained that City Beautiful is facing many new challenges like traffic, congestion, parking problems, slums, solid waste management, etc. City has faced many upheavals in the past, like to build Anandgarh in 2001 and the new Chandigarh in 2013, proposal to build Tata Towers on the backside of famed Capitol complex in 2010, etc. And now we have our question and answer session. We have our first question. Chandigarh city during planning, was any Vastu rules were kept in mind during the construction, and the city is built with any Vastu Shastra rules? So I would like Architect Surendra Baga to answer these questions. I would explain again the question. The Chandigarh city during planning, any Vastu rules were kept in mind during construction, and is the city built with any Indian Vastu Shastra rule? Over to you, Architect Baga, sir.
No, it was not followed. Vastu rules were never followed. It was altogether a new concept. Thank you.
Okay. And next question, a suggestion, more like it. If Laurie Baker's optimum dwelling housing was part of Chandigarh city development, then slums were not developed and hence the city would have been under control. Would you like to answer, Architect Surendra Baga?
Yes, ma'am, I would like to answer. I have done a study of all contemporary capital cities of the world, including Islamabad and other cities. The problem with all the modern capital cities is that our planners and policymakers have kept no provision for the housing for the urban poor. No thought was given, no land was reserved. And obviously, if land is given and the models of Laurie Baker architecture are followed, I think the problem of slums would have been minimized to a great deal. That is one. And I think at no level, at policy level, or no thinking was done about the urban poor. That is why slums are created, because we never gave any thought to that problem. And in order to solve such problems, I would like to announce here in the presence of His Excellency that we at Chandigarh have organized a special seminar with the participation of the Swiss Embassy and Swiss experts on the housing for urban poor a few years back, and that went great. That was a great success. Thank you so much.
So this was the last question, and to answer one question, yes, we will be sharing our recording with you via a link. And moving further, for the last part of today's session, we have Dr. Aradhana Jindal with us. Dr. Aradhana Jindal is currently principal at MM School of Architecture, MM University, Sadapur, Ambala, and completed her PhD from DCRUST, Murthal, Sonipat, and she has always been deeply interested in the affairs of Chandigarh, and she will be concluding our today's session. Over to you, Dr. Aradhana Jindal. We cannot. Yes, you are now.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Ralph Peckham, Professor Philip, Madam Sumit Kaur, Architect Surendra Baga, Advocate Manmohan Lal Sarin, for initiating dialogue on City Beautiful and its legacy, issues and vision for the future during today's webinar. Well, the efforts made by ACT Chandigarh and Sakar Foundation are really laudable for organizing the much needed webinar series under the patronage of Embassy of Switzerland in India, with support from Le Corbusier Foundation Paris, IIA Chandigarh Punjab chapters, FSAI and SHM GEM. Well, their initiative to include people from bureaucracy and other professions on its panel for discussions on the issues of the City Beautiful and upcoming metropolitan region is also highly commendable. City is a living organism which grows slowly by assimilating values, cultures, aspirations, and expectations of the people. The residents of the city put soul within the body of the city and make it lively and interactive. But unplanned growth of the city in the absence of a strong vision ruins the inclusive growth of the city. And that is what has happened in the case of Chandigarh. Chandigarh with its legacy is standing at the crossroads, where different roads take one to different perspectives of the bureaucracy, politicians, locals, architects, and planners. But there is no unanimous solution to problems of the city. During today's webinar, Advocate Manmohan Lal Sarin shared his experiences of living in the city for the last 66 years. He has rightly pointed out that the residents need to be aware of what's going on around them and be vocal about the same. He also expressed his deep concern about too many changes taking place in the basic structure of the city. Well, his experiences as city resident are quite valuable and are to be taken into account. Public participation is an important tool for understanding the perspectives of the locals in finding out the issues of the city and deciding the future course of action. Architect Shilpa, due to her close interaction with the city's major issues and action on its legal framework, advocated the need of discussing the issues of the city in the public domain. Chandigarh has covered up a journey of 70 years. Though 70 years is not a very long time to discuss the legacy of any city, yet Chandigarh, due to its being a modern city designed by a legendary architect, has much in its lap to be labeled as the historic legacy. Dr. Philip delivered a talk in his presentation, raised the question of the transition of Le Corbusier's work from the contemporary to the historical. Architect Sumit Kaur, in her capacity as Chief Architect of Chandigarh, has worked deeply on the Chandigarh Master Plan 2031. Hence, expressed her views on Chandigarh Master Plan 2031, a vision for the sustainable development of the city beautiful, very well. She explained that the essence of the original concept by the master architect has been retained in the master plan by respecting the historical legacy of its circulation system, ecologically sensitive areas, green spaces, backdrop of the Shivalik Hills and the capital complex to strive for the city's sustainable future within the constraints of its imposed periphery. But she regretted that in spite of notification of the master plan, there seems to be no coordinated action on realizing the vision of a sustainable Chandigarh. She also asserted the urgent need for preparation of a metropolitan plan that fits into the established development pattern so as to be in tandem amidst three independently governed territories. Architect Surinder Baga, in his well-thoughtful presentation, talked about the pertinent issues of the city beautiful. As per him, the issues range from unplanned development of the villages around the periphery of the city to traffic congestion, poor management of parking, solid waste management, defective cycle tracks, unsafe walkability, slums, etc. His main focus was to highlight the lack of coordination between both the states and UT in the implementation of any planning-based schemes. The Well, the webinar was able to ignite many questions for all to brood and find out their sustainable solutions. In a nutshell, the past, present, and future of the city need to be woven like a carpet so as to retain not only the character of the city but also pave way for inclusion of changes taking place as a result of urbanization in an inclusive manner as per the CMP 2031 vision. Le Corbusier said, "The seed of Chandigarh is well sown. It is for the citizen to see that the tree flourishes. So it is high time that all the stakeholders sit across the table to think and work out a legal solution to fulfill the vision of Le Corbusier." I'm quite hopeful that this webinar will act like a catalyst to safeguard the future of city as anticipated by its organizers. Thank you and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So I would like to announce that everybody must stay connected with us on social media. We will be uploading videos and very good information about it. And any ideas, issues, views can be shared via the social media platform. We have one more suggestion, that is to promote green materials in new construction is another way in the city development. Yes, it is. We all agree with that. And now moving towards the next part, I invite architect Mansi Ghavri to present the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to propose a vote of thanks for the contribution of each and every one of you for having made this webinar a memorable event. We would like to express deep gratitude to ACT Chandigarh and Sakar Foundation for giving us this opportunity to meet and exchange knowledge on the city beautiful. We are grateful to His Excellency Dr. Ralph Peckham, Ambassador of Switzerland to India and Bhutan, for sparing his valuable time for us. We would like to convey thanks to our speakers, Dr. Philip from Switzerland, Mr. Manmohan Lal Sareen, Senior Advocate Chandigarh, Architect Shilpa Das, Architect Sumit Kaur, Architect Surinder Baga from Chandigarh. Special thanks to Dr. Aradhna Jindal, Principal and Dean, School of Architecture, University, Ambala, for offering concluding remarks today and giving us the brief of the webinar and everything that we talked about. We would like to thank Ms. Madhura, Cultural Officer in Switzerland Embassy, for her support and contribution. In addition to that, we are grateful to academic and research institutions, Chitkara University, Punjab and Himachal Pradesh, Chandigarh College of Architecture, Chandigarh, IPS Academy, Indore, Lovely Professional University, Jalandhar, RIMT University, Mandi Gobindkar, CT Group of Institutions, Jalandhar, GNDEC, Ludhiana, University, Sadopur, Ambala, IKG, PTU, Mohali, and CRRID, Chandigarh, for their wholehearted participation. We are grateful to our supporting organizers, Embassy of Switzerland to India and Bhutan, Consulate General of Switzerland in Mumbai and Bangalore, Le Corbusier Foundation, Paris, Ultratech Cements, Indian Institute of Architects, FSAI, Engine, Chandigarh and Punjab chapters. Our special thanks to all of you for spending your 2 hours for this webinar and making it a success. Our deep gratitude is due to all the media personalities for their wholehearted support for this program. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, architect Mansi Ghavri. And once again, we are really grateful for our supporting organizations, Embassy of Switzerland to India and Bhutan, Consulate General of Switzerland in Mumbai, and Swissnex India, Consulate General of Switzerland in Bangalore, Le Corbusier Foundation, Paris, Ultratech Cement, ACT Chandigarh, Indian Institute of Architects, FSAI, GEM Chandigarh and Punjab chapters. And I would like to announce that our next webinar is on April 9, 2021, and I would like the audience to kindly register for the same. We would really like your presence. And now we have come to an end of our today's session. It was a really remarkable one. I thank everybody present here. Thank you so much, everybody, and hope you have a remarkable day ahead.